Hello and thank you for watching the Angry Rooster Creations channel. Today we are taking a look at another fountain pen. This is a video on the Hongdian N7 fountain pen. And this particular example is in the gray rabbit finish, and it has the long blade nib in it. Now, for starters, I'm just going to show this pen does come in the little metal tin that a lot of Hongdian pens come in. Not all of them, but say if you get something like an M2 or one of the Black Forest pens, they all tend to come in these little metal tins. And this one's no exception. So one thing I will note though, I was a little surprised when I got this pen. This one actually comes with, or my example here, actually came with a wrench to disassemble the piston, which is pretty nice. So, get all that out of the way, and here is our pen. Like I said, this particular version of the pen is the Gray Rabbit example. It has this cloudy gray acrylic body. The end finial here, which is also the knob for the piston. The cap here, as well as the section, are metal. Now, I'm not entirely sure if these are some kind of a lacquered finish on brass. Part of the texture here almost makes me feel like it could be some kind of an anodized finish, but it doesn't exactly, like what would be on aluminum, but it doesn't exactly look like an anodizing. So, if I had to guess, knowing what I know about a lot of metal-bodied or metal sectioned and metal-pieced Chinese fountain pens, is that they're usually some kind of an applied finish on a brass. But I can't confirm, and I don't exactly want to scratch the finish to find out. But yes, these pieces here that are that dark gray, as well as the cap, are metal. Now, on my example here, the ink window, so you can see the ink window here. The ink window is smoked. And the reason I say this, I bought this one from Amazon, and in a lot of the listings, a lot of the pictures, the ink window looks to be clear. But in the pen, as I've received it here, the ink window is, smoked. Now, the cap, if we look here, if I can get this to focus, on the cap band, it might be hard to make out because it's written very small, but on our cap band here, it says LT Hongdian around the band, which is pretty common, sort of a roll mark on a lot of their cap bands. The finial here is indeed a little rabbit with a moon in the background. And on the markings on the cap, you have various degrees of little crescent moons, moons with little rabbit silhouettes, and stars. It's mostly moons and rabbits, because that's, the sort of motif for the theme of this particular pen. Now, on the cap here, I'm not entirely sure when the significance of when this was released, this pen. It might be hard to read in the light because of some glare I've got going on. But the writing here says month rabbit. So I'm not entirely sure if there's a month of the rabbit. I know, for instance, Chinese zodiac is years. So I'm not entirely sure what the significance of that is. I know I've heard on several videos that they do little animal themed things is because I guess the design team at Hongdian is very fond of animals. In fact, on the Black Forest, you have that dove logo, and on the M2s, you have that sort of yin and yang cat on the finial. And, you know, there's other pens made by Hongdian that also have similar things with different animals. This one happens to be a rabbit. Now, there's another version of this pen that the N7, which is a green color with gold trim, and it's a peacock themed pen. It has peacock feathers on, you know, sort of embossed on the cap, or, you know, and it has a sort of peacock fan on the finial. Now, one of the primary reasons I chose this one, the sort of gray moon rabbit, is I'm not really a fan of gold accents and gold accoutrements, and this one has the blacked out sort of black chrome look to it, and it also has the blacked out nib here, which, speaking of the nib, if I can get it to focus here in the light, it's got the, once again, it's got the, now here it says F, which would be fine, and Hongdian, of course, this is a ground nib. It's ground to a blade style nib, and it's got the pagoda on the nib, and this is a size 6 nib. Now, I do believe that this nib and feed are friction fit. I will say, though, I was not actually able to pull this out to do a cleaning. Now, I don't have like a rubber gripper on hand or like a thick rubber band to put on this to give myself a little extra grip. And I was a little afraid. I didn't want to do too much prying. I didn't want to potentially damage the fins on the feet or anything. I'll handle that at a different time. So it is pretty tight in here, but my understanding is correct. This is a friction fit nib. As far as I could tell, I tried to see if the nib section would unscrew. I was putting some pressure on it. It didn't act like it wanted to move, and I didn't want to put any more, you know, torsion on it. So I don't believe it has a screw out assembly here, you know, or a threaded assembly there. It's just friction fit nib and feed. Now, onto our dimensions here. The length of the pen, when it's capped, is 5 1/4 inches. Uncapped, it's 4 13/16. And posted, which this pen does post, it's 6 3/16 of an inch. And it posts pretty securely, pretty positively. Now, when it posts, the point of balance is just forward of the cap, which, the way I would hold this pen and write with it, that is actually forward of the web of my hand, so that would have this weighted towards the paper, which is what I prefer. So I could see myself actually writing with this one posted, but it doesn't really need to be posted, not for somebody of my hand size. And I generally usually don't post pens unless it's mandatory. It's just, I'm not really much of a pen poster. And as far as, like I said, of my hand size, I wear a size large glove. My fingers are length is large. The width of my hand technically measures the same as a medium glove, so I would say I have medium large hands. So as a gauge, I've got plenty of length if I'm holding this in a, you know, typical in a typical kind of grip, writing grip. I've got plenty of length here that the pen does not need to be posted. If you're somebody that uses, you know, potentially other non-standard types of writing grips, or if you have larger hands, you would have to have pretty large hands to make posting mandatory with this pen. Now, and also the length of the cap is 2.5 inches. As far as the girth size of the pen, this is a size 6 nib. The fattest or widest point of the pen is right here at the ink window, and it's a 1/2 inch in diameter right there. The grip, there's a little slight step down where the threads are here on the grip section. Not much. It's not really obtrusive, and it tapers down to the thinnest point right here at the front of the section, which is 7/16 of an inch in diameter. And then the pen is pretty much the barrel is mostly straight until right about here. You can see through the translucent acrylic there where the piston assembly threads in, and right about where that piston assembly starts, the piston head's here, the screw of the piston assembly is there. It tapers slightly going back, and at the end of the finial, it's 13/30 seconds, or just under 7/16 of an inch. So between 7/16 3/8. And the diameter of the cap is 19/30 seconds, or just between 9/16 and 5/8 of an inch. So and as far as the cap itself, we'll go back into this. It has this stamped sheet metal clip. It is sprung pretty securely. Inside of the cap, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this to show up very good on camera, but the inside of the cap, there is pretty much a full-length plastic cap liner, and it is a one-piece plastic cap liner. There is no kind of fasteners or any kind of hole or separate piece up in the top. Now, in this cap, there is not a shelf that fits on, that hits on the end of the section here. It does appear that this pen achieves its seal by the thread here seating on the section. So the cap seal is formed back here at the threads. Now, on terms of the threads, these threads they're a really smoothed over, rounded profile. They're not exactly like an Acme thread, but they're not a sharp thread profile, and they do have that finish over top. So it is a metal going into a plastic, but I don't really see that this is going to be a aggressive thread profile that's going to eat at the threads in the cap. So long as you're not putting Gorilla mitts on it and just really cranking that cap down. Now, I will also mention just real quick, you can see through the acrylic there to the brass of the piston assembly. I'll also note that when you turn the piston here, the piston head actually does go all the way in bottom. It enters the ink window. And so you will see the piston head. I know some piston fill pens, they just come and level up right here and they never enter into the ink window. On this pen, it does enter into the ink window. When you draw the piston back and it fully seats, the piston head stops about right there. So that your ink reservoir, aside from what's inside the feed, the ink reservoir is about this long. And it looks, I haven't disassembled this, but it looks like that ink reservoir, that barrel there, is about 3/8 in diameter on the inside. If you were to use the piston wrench, obviously you would open it up. It's probably not going to show on the camera. There are little small holes there. Now, I also have this Asvine wrench that I already had before. If you were using a wrench like this, you're going to use that sort of prong end there that's got those two little nubs. Like I said, it comes with one itself, its own wrench. Of course, in this case, it's actually kind of difficult to get this particular wrench in. But you would go around until the wrench hooks down into, like that. It hooks into two little recesses there, and then you would unscrew the wrench, unscrew the piston assembly. I am not going to disassemble the pen. The pen is new. I don't have a need to disassemble it right now, and I'm not, there are some other videos out there where people do fully disassemble this pen, but I don't want to do anything to potentially damage the pen, which I shouldn't, but I don't want to overcomplicate this. Now I am going to try to see if I can get a zoom with this little magnifying glass here to look at this nib. So this long blade nib here, I don't know how well it's going to focus. This appears to be an architect style of nib. Now, I have done a video on a Kaigalu long knife nib, which was a Naginata style nib. This one, like I said, I don't know how well it's going to show up. It doesn't have that sort of triangular or pear-shaped flat spot where the surface area of the nib that will be writing on the paper gets wider as you lessen the angle of the pen to the paper. So I do believe, we'll see when I get to the writing, I believe this is more of a architect grind. I've seen, it seems that there's a little bit of consistency in that in these Chinese specialty grind nibs, if it's called a blade nib, then it's typically an architect grind. And if it's called a knife nib, it's typically that sort of Naginata or like Togi style of nib. I think there's a little bit of some oddities that go on with the translation of those nib names and types. So I don't think that's a fully universal, that if it's a blade type nib, you're going to get an architect, and if it's a knife type nib, you're going to get a sort of Naginata type nib. I think it's just a general tendency. So that pretty much covers everything as far as the externals and all those features, the external features and all of the ink or the pen. So for this review, I'm going to use an ink that's actually new to me. This is a Monteverde Purple Rain ink. I kind of wanted to put a purple ink in this pen, but the one purple ink that I have is the Noodler's Bay State ink, and I was a little afraid that it might have a tendency to want to stain the pen, so I was looking around to find an ink to try out, and I've kind of settled on this one because it had a hue to it that looked like ink hue that I might enjoy. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up real quick. Now, when I did sort of soak this nib to try to soaked it in some hot water to try to get it, see if I could loosen it up a bit. It appeared that this nib was dip tested with some kind of like a pinkish ink. It was at the very least dip tested because there was some ink residue that came off when I soaked the nib. Now I'm probably not going to do necessarily fully top this. No, I guess I'll go ahead and top it off. There we go. Just go ahead and get a full fill. Should be pretty close to full fill, at least. Well, I just ran the piston up and down twice. It didn't get me a full fill, but it's good enough for what we're doing today. Dab that off. You can see the ink in there. Alright. Now, the paper that I'm going to write on for this test is going to be a piece of Blick 50-pound white sulfite drawing paper. Now, let's see. Run across. Yep, that is a nice fine line going that way. I'm going to lessen the angle, see if this gets any fatter. Nope. So this is not a Naginata style nib. Regardless of the angle of how I have the nib to the paper, it's drawing a consistently fine line in that direction. So this is, oh yeah. If I steepen this angle, it's almost pretty consistent. So yeah, this is definitely an architect nib. Yeah, it's an architect nib. So let's see. Now, I know that with the way with the way that I'm writing here is not necessarily going to show off that architect nib like it will for most people. So real quick, before I do any more writing, I'll just show you. So there you can see the, well, what would be vertical strokes. They're very thin. There's the, what normally would be the horizontal strokes. Quite fat. And you can kind of see that variation a bit here. And line weight. Now, sorry. I will note this. I don't generally write this way. You can see I'm a little odd in that my hand is generally to the side of what I write, sometimes slightly over. So what I'm writing with something like an architect nib, it's what a lot of people who write in a more standard type of writing would see with an italic nib. So the way my cursive writing looks, what would be for most people a vertical stroke, which should be thinner on me, is the horizontal stroke, and the vertical stroke for most people, or the horizontal stroke I should say for most people, which would be the wide stroke, is going to be my vertical stroke, which is wide. So if I if I write in a little bit of cursive writing here, it looks like this paper and this ink are probably not the best combination. It's actually starting to feather a little bit here. I have tried this ink in some other papers. It's just this is a scratch sheet that I had for doing a different video. So you can definitely see that it is a specialty grind nib in the writing here. Now we're going to see, does she reverse write? It does seem to reverse write quite well. So, and it keeps going. So if you find that you needed to reverse write with it, see if I do my normal horizontal lines, you can see it does get very fine with that reverse nib writing. Now as far as seems to keep up, and it also seems to be flowing quite wet. Let's see. I mean, yeah, it seems to be quite wet flowing. That's pretty nice. Of course, flexing the nib is kind of pointless, but I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on it. It does have a little spring to it. It fattens it up a little bit, but mostly it's just dumping more ink on the paper. Of course, with this style of nib, that kind of defeats the purpose of using a nib grind like this if you're going to try to flex right with it. You can see that ink does want to... Well, some of that grew afterwards, because, like I said, this ink and this paper don't seem to be the best combination here. Let me see. But yeah, it seems like the nib keeps up pretty good. It and it does it very much does what I would expect it to do for an architect nib. Now real quick, I've got my my old trusty Lamy Safari here. Make sure she's inked up. She is. This Lamy Safari is an extra fine, so if I'm gonna put down some extra fine lines with this Safari, I'm gonna do some of the vertical strokes on the bottom here with the N7, and then I'm gonna go above it, do some horizontal strokes with the M7. Alright. So you can see the black lines there in the middle are the extra fine Lamy Safari. So it seems that it might actually be slightly thinner on that vertical stroke. Then obviously you can see the horizontal stroke is quite thick, you know, quite a thicker line. And I will also say this nib feels nice and smooth on this paper. I mean, I can hear the sound of some feedback, but I really don't feel it, to be honest with you. See, it makes some noise on the page, but it's very, very smooth in that vertical. But of course, it's a you're pulling against a much narrower surface area when you do that. But overall, I think it's a real nice writer. Yeah, just like I said, this paper and ink combo are not the best. They're not really playing the nicest together, but yeah, overall it seems to be a pretty nice smooth writer. The pen feels pretty good in the hand. You know, it does have a little bit of weight to it compared to some other pens. I mean, you got a brass piston assembly, you've got metal section and metal end finial, and it is a turned acrylic. It's got a thicker body to it, so it's got a little bit more weight to it. It doesn't feel like an injection molded pen in the hand, but it's not, excessively heavy or anything like that. Like I said, if you post the cap, I'm not really much of a poster. It doesn't excessively back weight the pen. It would be comfortable to write with it that way. I don't really believe that if you were to post it like this, because the internal finial there is going to be contacting the plastic of the cap liner, and then there's some dead air space. I don't know how well this is going to show up. Probably won't, but there's some dead air space between the cap there itself and the barrel. So that shouldn't scratch up your finish or anything posting this cap. And like I said, the clip spring is pretty nice and springy. It should hold itself pretty well in a pocket. Despite I don't think the weight of the pen is excessive for the springiness of the clip that's on this particular pen. And it seems like a pretty nice pen. Now, that being said, with the decoration and everything on this and the kind of color and all, I would probably be mindful if you're going to carry this pen, how you carry it, where you carry it. If you put it in a pocket, I wouldn't carry it with anything else in that pocket. I wouldn't clip it into your jeans pocket or your slacks pocket or anything where you've got keys or a pocket knife or anything that could potentially scratch the finish on the pen. I'm not saying that from experience. I probably didn't do that with another pen. I did. Yeah, if I was going to carry this around, and I might, I would probably keep it in a pen case. Something if you want to keep it nice and pretty. Now this one, most of my pens I use for drawing. This one I'm probably just going to use it for actually writing. It's one of the other reasons I went with a different ink option, and I really wanted another purple ink. Like I said, I didn't want to use an ink that might be prone to staining it. This sketch paper and this ink, like I said, didn't play well together, but all in all, so far I'm very happy with it. I'll be doing some more writing with it and doing some other things, writing notes and sketch and things. I'm getting to use it a little bit more, but from what I see right now, it seems to be pretty... It seems to be a pretty nice writing pen, and I expected as much. I've, so far, with a lot of the Hongdian pens that I've got these two, and I've got some C2s, and then I've got, wherever it's at over here, I have a 517. I really do like the nibs that Hongdian puts on their pens. This is the first specialty ground Hongdian pen that nib that I've had, and it seems to work really nice. I really enjoyed it, and it does the architect thing. I have a Kaigelu long knife, excuse me, which is the Naginata Togi style nib that I have reviewed previously on this channel and showed. And so this is technically my first of an actual architect style of nib. So I'm going to play around with this some more, do some writing with it. And so far, if it continues to function as it has just in this sort of first impressions video, I think I'm going to be very happy with this pen. Now, I purchased this pen on Amazon right now. Right now, as I'm making this video, there's Prime Day deals and it's cheaper. I paid $35 for this. That being said, that I believe makes this the most economical pen to buy that has that blade style or architect style nib. Most of the blade style nibs, you know, it generally adds like a $10 premium to the whatever the standard price of a normal nib in that pen is. So this one, I think it's usually around $27 if you have a standard nib in it. So it's not quite the premium, but on some pens, a $30 pen becomes like a $45 pen if you want to get that architect grind, that specialty grind nib. So this is one of the more economical pen models to get that nib. I'm not entirely sure what the price is on AliExpress right now, but as things sit currently, if you can find a pen on Amazon, it's actually now, in some cases, generally going to be cheaper than getting on AliExpress when you include shipping and tax. So that's part of why I got this one from Amazon versus AliExpress. And a lot of times those Amazon, if you're in the United States, it's going to come from an Amazon warehouse or a US distributor, so the shipping time is going to be a bit faster. So those are things to potentially consider if you're looking at this. But yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say on this one. That's going to do it for this video. If you watched it to the end of this video, I thank you. And if you enjoyed it, you got some useful information out of it, appreciate hitting the like down there. That would help me out. And if you got any questions about the pen that I can potentially answer in the future, or if you've got your own experiences with the pen you want to talk about, things that you've had happen, pros, cons, etc., or, you know, you have some suggestions or critiques about the way I shot and did my video, comment section down there is open. I don't get a whole lot of comments right now, so if you drop a comment on one of my videos, I'll see the notification and I'll read it, and I'll try to comment back if needed, you know. And if you've seen this video, maybe you've seen some of my other ones, you like the way that I try to present my information, and you like the kind of format that I'm trying to produce these videos in, I would really appreciate a subscription. That also helped me out. But like I said, that's going to do it for this video. I hope to catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and bye.